The scene is set. It's January 2026. We're in Riverhead, Suffolk County. The wind is coming off the water, just cutting right through you.
Right.
And outside the courthouse, you have the press corps all gathered. Inside, Rex Heuermann, a 6'4" architect from Massapequa Park. And this is the part of the story, the third act, where the tension is supposed to break.
Right, where you expect some resolution.
Exactly. He's been in custody for over 3 years. But instead of a resolution, we are just looking at a dossier that, well, it just keeps getting darker.
It's the waiting. The waiting distorts everything. And 3 years is a long time in the criminal justice system, even for a case this huge.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now, with the trial finally on the books for September, is this collision of two very different worlds.
You have the ordinary giant, the commuter in the suit, and then you have the author of what we're calling the Silent Dossier. And that's really the mission for this deep dive. We are unpacking that dossier. We're looking at the countdown to the trial using the latest reports from CBS New York and a breakdown from the Hidden Killers podcast.
But we aren't just listing evidence. We need to get into the architecture of this case.
Because Judge Timothy Mazzei just drew a line in the sand. He actually said, on the record, this trial starts right after Labor Day 2026, come hell or high water.
And that phrase isn't just judicial frustration, it's a procedural ultimatum.
Right.
The prosecution has dropped a 723-page evidence inventory.
700 pages.
That is a massive, massive data dump. We are talking about terabytes of digital forensics, physical evidence, witness statements. The judge is basically telling the defense, you've had 3 years, the stalling ends now.
A 723-page encyclopedia. But inside that mountain of data, there is one document that feels like it belongs in one of my scripts. A producer would tell me it's too on the nose.
You're talking about the planning document.
I am.
It is the absolute centerpiece of the behavioral evidence. And you're right, it does feel scripted, but that's because he was trying to script reality. This wasn't a diary.
No.
I think that's a misconception people have. They imagine some emo journal about his feelings. This was a deleted Word file. It was a project management file.
That's the terrifying part, the banality of it.
Yeah.
It's formatted like a punch list for a construction site. Our sources detail specific categories: body prep, supplies, targets.
Exactly. And when you look at the entries, you see terms like rope strength and descriptions of specialized knots. These are just engineering problems to him.
He wasn't grappling with the morality of murder?
No, he was grappling with the logistics of it. Body prep isn't a vague term. The source material says it included specific instructions on removing heads and hands to prevent identification. It's an attempt to remove the humanity from the victim.
So they become just another object to be managed. And he didn't just pull this out of a vacuum. The document explicitly references John Douglas and the book Mindhunter. That's the detail that keeps me up at night. He was reading the playbook of the people who hunt men like him.
It's a classic countermeasure strategy, but it's also, deeply narcissistic. By citing Mindhunter, he's placing himself in this fantasy where he is smarter than the FBI. He's thinking, I know what they look for, so I'll just invert their profile.
But that's where the architect persona fails, right?
It does, because you can design a perfect building on paper, but the ground shifts. And in this case, the document listed a dump site, a very specific geographic location.
And that digital entry matched the actual location where the remains were found.
And that's the smoking gun.
You can argue that a planning document is just dark fantasy. Some people write horror stories, but you can't argue away the fact that his fiction mapped perfectly onto a real-world crime scene.
That is the prosecution's bridge from fantasy to reality. The defense will try to say, this is just a file, it's creative writing. But when the creative writing contains the GPS coordinates of a body, that defense just crumbles. It moves the intent from passion to structural integrity. He engineered the crime scene.
So we have the digital blueprint, that's the mind part of the case, but we also have the physical evidence, the body of the case. And this is where things get legally sticky. We have to talk about the pizza crust.
The microscopic bridge.
Yeah.
This is going to be the absolute battlefield for the Fourth Amendment arguments in court.
Walk us through this, because on the surface, it seems simple. Heuermann is in Manhattan, he eats some pizza, tosses the crust in a public garbage can. Detectives fish it out, they match the DNA, boom, caught.
Right.
But his lawyer, Danielle Koish, is throwing a fit about this.
Well, she has to. It's her only move on the nuclear DNA. Her argument is all about privacy. She's quoted as saying, Rex Heuermann may have abandoned his pizza crust, but he never abandoned all that personal information that is now our DNA.
It's a philosophical question almost. If I throw away a tissue, am I throwing away my genetic rights?
Current case law generally says yes, it's called abandonment. Once you toss it in a public bin, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy. But the defense is trying to push the envelope.
How?
They're arguing that because genomic sequencing is so advanced now, because it reveals so much more about you than just your identity, it requires a warrant. They are literally calling the science magic to try and spook the jury.
To make it sound like voodoo, not hard science.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the hair. The single hair found on the Burlap sack. This links him to the 1993 murder of Sandra Castilla. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't the same kind of DNA test as the pizza, is it?
No, and that distinction is vital. The pizza crust gave them nuclear DNA, the gold standard, unique to one person on Earth. The hair on the burlap was tested for mitochondrial DNA.
That's passed down from the mother.
Exactly. So it's not as unique as nuclear DNA. It identifies a maternal lineage.
So, theoretically, it could belong to his mother, his brother, anyone in that maternal line.
Theoretically, yes. And that is the gap the defense will try to drive a truck through. Now, the prosecution is using advanced sequencing to narrow that pool, but you have to remember, that hair sat in evidence for 30 years.
30 years.
The defense is going to hammer on chain of custody. They'll ask, how do we know a hair didn't just float onto that burlap in the lab in 1995? How do we know it wasn't cross-contaminated?
They are trying to dismantle the house brick by brick. They're challenging 20 separate search warrants. They want the planning document thrown out, the DNA thrown out.
It's standard operating procedure for a capital defense, but they're being very aggressive. They're also attacking the witnesses. There was that text message witness mentioned in the source material.
Right, the former roommate of Amber Costello. They texted her a photo of Heuermann and asked, is this the guy?
And the reply was, yes, 100,000%, which sounds great for the prosecution,
But in a courtroom, that's a problem.
it's called a suggestive identification. If the police send you one photo and say, is this him? You are psychologically primed to say yes. The defense will argue the witness was led to that answer.
So you have this mountain of evidence that looks overwhelming. The document, the pizza, the hair, but the defense just needs to create reasonable doubt in one or two key areas.
And they can hang a jury on specific counts.
And speaking of reasonable doubt, this is where the script takes a turn I absolutely did not see coming. We have to talk about the distraction, or maybe the second predator.
The arrest of Andrew Dykes. This happened in December 2025. It just completely upended the entire narrative.
For 14 years, investigators told the public that Tanya Jackson and her daughter, Baby Doe, were victims of the Long Island serial killer.
And everyone assumed they were part of the same pattern.
Then suddenly, police arrest Andrew Dykes and charge him with those murders.
And this forces us to confront a horrifying reality. Ocean Parkway wasn't the private graveyard of a single mastermind. It was a corridor for multiple unrelated predators. It was a shared dumping ground.
The implication of that is just staggering. You have Heuermann allegedly dumping bodies in the scrub, and seemingly right down the road, maybe a few years apart, Andrew Dykes is doing the exact same thing.
And they didn't know each other. They were just coexisting in this ecosystem of death.
Which is a gift-wrapped present for Heuermann's defense team.
A huge one. Michael Brown, his lead attorney, is going to stand in front of that jury and just say systemic failure. He'll argue.
Ladies and gentlemen, the police were 100% sure Tanya Jackson was a victim of the Gilgo Beach killer, and they were wrong. If they were wrong about her, how can you trust they aren't wrong about Sandra Castilla?
It casts a shadow over the entire timeline. They're already pointing fingers at John Bittrolf, another convicted killer, for the Castilla murder. It's the some other dude did it defense.
Except now they have proof that some other dudes were in fact using that exact location. It muddies the waters.
How so? Forensic science relies on exclusion proving it couldn't be anyone else. But when you have a literal parade of killers using the same stretch of highway, exclusion becomes much, much harder. The jury has to be convinced that this specific body belongs to this specific killer in an area that seems to attract them like magnets.
And meanwhile, the man at the center of it all, Rex Heuermann, is sitting in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day.
He's reviewing that 723-page inventory. He has access to a law library. His attorney says he's looking forward to the trial. He maintains his innocence.
No plea deal.
Absolutely not. District Attorney Ray Tierney has made it clear. They are going to trial. They want a verdict.
It all brings us back to that duality, though. The man in the suit versus the man writing the manual. The trial is going to be a spectacle, but the real horror, for me, is in the gaps that are still left.
The unfinished blueprint.
Exactly. We have the Gilgo 4, we have Sandra Castile, but who else is waiting in the wings?
We have names like Karen Vergata, we have Asian male Doe, we have Shanann Gilbert.
Shanann Gilbert. The woman whose frantic 911 call started this whole investigation. The police have always said her death was accidental, a tragedy in the marsh, but her family has never accepted that.
And now, with Heuermann and Dykes both operating in that area, it reopens every closed door. If there were 2 killers, why not 3?
Right.
Shanann Gilbert's case remains the uncomfortable question mark. She isn't tied to Heuermann in this indictment. She isn't tied to Dykes. So, is she a victim of circumstance, or is there another architect we just haven't found yet?
And that's the thought that sticks with you. We want to believe in the super predator myth because it's simpler. One bad man. You catch him, the nightmare ends. But the reality of the Dykes arrest exposes is that evil is, well, it's common.
It's ordinary.
It's your neighbor.
It challenges our need for closure. We might get a verdict for Heuermann in 2026. We might get justice for the Gilgo 4. But the broader dossier of Long Island, that might never be fully closed.
So as we head towards September, come hell or high water, we are watching the construction of a legal case that has to withstand the most intense scrutiny imaginable. The prosecution has the blueprints, the digital ones and the genetic ones.
But the defense has the chaos of history on their side, and the jury will have to decide which version of the story they believe: the architectural precision of a serial killer or the chaotic coincidence of a shared graveyard.
The dossier is open, the trial is set, and we will be here to read every page as it turns. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the blueprint of evil.
Stay safe.
And watch the shadows. We'll see you in the next one.